Hello YouTube, and welcome to another video by Gcse, revision, tips, tricks and banter. Now, as you can see from the title of the video, this is Analysing an Unseen Poem, and this is for the 2016 Gcse exam, and 5 steps on how to really achieve those high grades. Now, step 1 is work out what the poem is about. So that's talking about, like, what is the subject of the poem, who is speaking, who is the narrator speaking to. So this is all different things. Like you can see here, she's 5 years old. She's a little. It's not she, obviously. Well, we don't know. It's a child. So she's sort of talking about. She's talking to herself, but also trying to explain that she doesn't really understand what's going on. That's sort of the subject. It's about the crossing of the border, but an underlying subject, an underlying tone of the poem is about how she doesn't understand what is going on as she is quite young. Step 2 is to identify the themes and the message of the poem. And that is talking about, like, why has the poet written the poem to explain her feelings? What are they trying to say? Well, these are all things you should include. What ideas are they using? Is it an emotional response to something that's happened? Is it trying to get an emotional response from the reader? Is it portraying a message or opinion on a subject or event? So these are all things you should take into account. These will all be in the description below, and these are all things you should take into account when writing your comment on the unseen poem in the exam. Step 3 is to identify the attitudes and feelings in the poem. So these are, what are the different emotions and feelings of the narrator poet. There's a lot of emotional talk in this, so if this came up, then emotion is really the key point of this, and it's how she doesn't understand, but emotion is even how she's feeling. She's feeling emotional because everyone around her is also feeling emotional, if you understand that. Like, she's still sort of, she can't understand it, but she does feel like quite emotional. What is the mood and the atmosphere of the poem? So this is quite a joyous piece because they're finally going home after all these years. So just try and look for key words. Like down here you can see a man bent down and kissed. Kissed and muddy is are the key words here, because you don't normally kiss mud, do you? So if he is literally kissing mud, that just shows you how happy they are to be going back home after quite a long time, if you get it, because it's an emotional piece, isn't it? And finally, how has the poet used different poetic techniques to show these attitudes and feelings? And if you are going to stick around later today, I will be doing a video on poetic techniques, the best way of trying to remember them, and how to include them in some questions. Step 4 is to identify these poetic techniques. This is like, what are the different poetic techniques that the poet has used to show the attitudes and feelings in the poem? How has the poet shown these feelings through form and structure? So this is like rhyme, rhythm, line length, stanza length, all those sort of things. And how has the poet used poetic devices, which I'll be covering in the video I mentioned later on, like metaphors, similes, caesura, enjambment, alliteration, juxtaposition, personification, to name a few that you really should. I would suggest using 4 or 5 just to really aim. You can even use more. And then lastly, step 5, and that is to explore your personal response to the poem. So how do you feel about the poem? How well does the poet get the message across in the poem? And are there other ways that the poem can be interpreted? And just a little advice for you, I would you should talk about the impact of the poem on the reader, but instead of saying like I, like you are the reader, refer to them as the reader. So instead of being like, oh, the impact on myself would be this. No, you'd say the impact on the reader. So just remember, the reader is the correct term of establishing who is reading the poem. I would practice going through these steps with unseen poems until you can do it, because remember, in this bit in this section of the exam, you're looking to spend about 30 minutes on this question. I would suggest 5 to 10 minutes reading, planning, and definitely a good 20 to 25 minutes writing, because you do need to get all sorts of points down. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope this